The sound of his hand hitting my daughter's face echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. It was a sharp, dry crack that instantly silenced the clinking of silverware and the soft jazz music playing in the background. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth, unable to process what my eyes had just witnessed. My daughter, my beautiful Sarah, stood there with her hand over her cheek, her eyes wide with a terror I had never seen before. But what froze my blood even more, what made my stomach turn in a way I cannot describe, was the sound that followed the silence. His mother, Brenda, sitting right across from me, threw her head back and let out a loud, cackling laugh. She clapped her hands together as if she were watching a comedy show, looking at her son with pride and saying, "That is right, Kevin. Show her who is the boss in this house." In that split second, the world slowed down. I looked at the red mark forming on Sarah's face, then at Kevin's smirking arrogance, and finally at Brenda's cruel joy. They thought I was just a retired old lady, a quiet grandmother who knitted sweaters. They had no idea who I really was before I retired. They had no idea that I had the power to end their comfortable lives with a single movement. I reached into my pocket, my hand trembling not with fear, but with a cold, focused rage, and I pulled out my phone. Hello everyone, I am Tina. Welcome to the channel where we share the most powerful and emotional stories of real life. I invite you to subscribe right now because here we build a family of people who believe in justice and truth. This story I am sharing today is the most personal and painful one I have ever lived. But I need to tell it so that no other mother has to go through this. Stay with me until the end, because you will not believe how a simple phone call uncovered a secret so dark it changed everything. To understand why that night ended the way it did, I need to take you back to the beginning. Sarah was my only child. After my husband George passed away 10 years ago, she became my entire world. She was a brilliant architect, full of life and dreams. When she met Kevin, I thought she had found her prince. Kevin was charming, handsome, and came from a wealthy family. He ran a successful real estate business, and on paper, he seemed perfect. But as a mother, and especially with my background, I should have paid more attention to the small things. I spent 30 years working as a judge in the criminal court. I spent decades looking into the eyes of liars, manipulators, and abusers. I thought I could spot a bad person a mile away. But when it comes to our children, sometimes we are blind. We want them to be happy so badly that we ignore the shadows. It started small. Brenda, Kevin's mother, was always a difficult woman. She was the kind of person who would give you a compliment that felt like a slap. She would tell Sarah, "Oh honey, that dress is brave for someone with your hips," or she would criticize Sarah cooking at every family gathering. I told Sarah to ignore her, that Brenda was just a lonely widow who did not know how to be kind. I was wrong. Brenda was not lonely. She was calculating. She was training Kevin. I remember one Christmas, Kevin made a joke about Sarah being stupid for forgetting to buy ice. It was not a funny joke. It was mean. But Sarah laughed it off, trying to keep the peace. I saw Brenda wink at Kevin that day. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I said nothing. I regret that silence every single day. Over the last year, Sarah changed. She stopped wearing the bright colors she loved. She cut her hair short because Kevin said long hair was messy. She started canceling our lunch dates, saying she was too busy with work. But I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, she would force a smile and say, "Everything is perfect, Mom. Kevin just wants the best for me." That is the phrase abusers love to use. They wrap their control in the language of love. They isolate you, break you down, and make you thank them for it. I sensed something was wrong, but I did not want to be the interfering mother-in-law. I respected their privacy. I respected it until the night of the Thanksgiving dinner at their new house. It was supposed to be a celebration. Sarah had spent 3 days cooking. The house looked like a magazine cover. When I arrived, Brenda was already there, holding a glass of wine and criticizing the table setting. Kevin was pacing around, looking agitated. Sarah looked thin, her face pale, her hands shaking slightly as she basted the turkey. I tried to help her in the kitchen, but she whispered, "Please, Mom, just go sit down. Kevin does not like too many people in the kitchen. It stresses him out." I went to the dining room. my heart heavy. When we finally sat down to eat, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Kevin complained that the turkey was dry. Brenda said the stuffing tasted like cardboard. Sarah just looked down at her plate, apologizing softly. Then came the moment that shattered everything. Sarah reached for the salt shaker to add some to her potatoes. Her hand bumped into Kevin's wine glass. It was an accident. A tiny, insignificant accident. A splash of red wine spilled onto the white tablecloth. Sarah gasped and immediately grabbed a napkin to blot it. "I am so sorry," she stammered. "I will get it out, I promise." Kevin stood up slowly. His face went completely blank, devoid of any emotion. That is the look of a predator. He did not yell. He did not scream. He just looked at her with pure disgust. "You are useless," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "You cannot do anything right, can you? Look at this mess. You are an embarrassment." Sarah stood up, tears welling in her eyes. "Kevin, please, it was just an accident," she pleaded. That was when it happened. He pulled his hand back and struck her across the face with such force that she stumbled back and nearly fell over her chair. The sound was sickening. And then came Brenda's laugh. That evil, supportive laugh. That applause. My daughter was holding her face, looking at me with eyes that screamed for help. In that moment, the mother in me wanted to jump across the table and tear him apart. But the judge in me took over. The part of me that knew the law, that knew consequences, and that knew exactly who to call. I did not scream. I did not cry. I picked up my phone. Kevin looked at me, sneering. "Who are you calling, old woman?" "The police. Go ahead. I own this town. They will not touch me." He was about to find out how wrong he was. My fingers moved across the screen of my phone with muscle memory I had not used in 5 years. I did not dial 911. Calling the general emergency line would send a patrol car with young officers who might be intimidated by Kevin's wealth or swayed by his charm. I knew how these men operated. They would claim it was a domestic dispute, a misunderstanding. Kevin would smile, shake their hands, and maybe get a warning. And once the police left, Sarah would pay the price. No, I was not going to let that happen. I dialed a personal number, a number I had saved for emergencies only. It rang twice. A deep, familiar voice answered. "Tina? Is everything all right?" It was Chief Miller. We had worked together for 20 years. He was a rookie when I was a prosecutor, and he was the chief of police when I retired from the bench. "Michael," I said, my voice steady and cold as ice. "I am at 450 Oakwood Drive. My son-in-law has just assaulted my daughter in front of me. I need you here. Personally, and bring 2 units. I want him in cuffs within 10 minutes. There was a pause on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. "I am on my way, Tina. Stay safe." I hung up and placed the phone on the table. Kevin was laughing now, pouring himself another glass of wine. "You are pathetic, Tina," he spat. "You think calling the cops scares me? Do you know who I golf with? Do you know who funds their charity ball? My mother is right. You and Sarah are weak. You are hysterical." I stood up slowly and walked over to Sarah. I put my arm around her trembling shoulders and guided her away from the table. "Don't speak to him, Sarah. Don't say a word." Brenda slammed her hand on the table. "How dare you? This is my son's house. You do not give orders here. You should teach your daughter how to behave instead of causing a scene. A good wife knows her place. If she gets a little discipline, she earned it. Look at what she did to the tablecloth. The cruelty of this woman was boundless. She valued a piece of fabric over her daughter-in-law's safety." I looked Brenda dead in the eye. "You are an accomplice to assault, Brenda. And if you say one more word, I will make sure you are charged with obstruction of justice too. Save your breath for your lawyer." For the next 8 minutes, the room was silent except for Sarah quiet sobbing. Kevin sat there, eating the turkey as if nothing had happened, trying to show how unbothered he was. But I saw his leg bouncing under the table. He was nervous. He knew I was not just a grandmother. He knew my reputation as the Iron Judge. He just thought his money was a shield strong enough to protect him. Then, we saw the flashing blue lights reflect against the dining room window. Not 1 car, but 3. Kevin stopped chewing. The front door burst open. Chief Miller walked in, looking like a storm cloud, followed by 4 uniformed officers. Kevin stood up, wiping his mouth, putting on his best charming smile. "Chief Miller, good to see you. Look, my mother-in-law is a bit dramatic. We just had a little accident with the wine and she got upset." Miller ignored him completely. He walked straight to me. "Are you okay, Tina? Is Sarah okay?" I nodded. He hit her, Michael, full force, in the face. "Assault and battery. I am the witness." Sarah looked up, her cheek now swollen and turning purple. Miller turned to Kevin. His face was hard as stone. "Kevin Harrison, you are under arrest for domestic assault." Kevin's eyes went wide. "You cannot do this. Do you know who I am?" "Officer, get this man off me." But the officers did not hesitate. They spun him around and clicked the handcuffs onto his wrists. Brenda shrieked. "Get your hands off my son. I will sue you. I will sue the entire department. This is kidnapping." She rushed toward the officers, grabbing at their arms. Chief Miller caught her wrist. "Ma'am, sit down, or you will be joining him in the back of the car." Brenda froze, looking at me with pure venom. "You will pay for this, Tina. You have destroyed your daughter's life. She needs him. She is nothing without him." As they dragged Kevin out, he shouted back at Sarah. "Don't you dare let them take me, Sarah. Tell them nothing happened. If I spend one night in jail, you are done. Do you hear me? You are done." Sarah flinched, burying her face in my shoulder. When the door closed and the sirens faded, the house felt terrifyingly empty. The adrenaline that had kept me standing began to fade, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. I sat Sarah down on the sofa. She was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. I went to the kitchen, got a bag of frozen peas, and gently placed it on her cheek. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and whispered the words that broke my heart into a million pieces. "Mom, this isn't the first time." "I know, baby," I said softly, stroking her hair. "I know, and I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner. But it ends tonight." That night, Sarah told me everything. It wasn't just slaps. It was the checking of her phone, the tracking of her car mileage, the screaming matches that lasted until 3 a.m. where he wouldn't let her sleep, the way Brenda would come over the next day and tell her she needed to try harder to please him. They had built a prison around my daughter, brick by brick, and convinced her she deserved to be inside it. As I listened to her, holding her hand, I made a silent vow to my late husband, George. I promised him I would protect our little girl. I had failed for a while, but I would not fail again. I was going to use every contact, every law, and every ounce of strength I had to bury Kevin and Brenda under the weight of justice. But I didn't know yet that the violence was just the tip of the iceberg. What I was about to discover about Brenda past would make domestic abuse look like a minor offense. Hey, my dear friend, before we continue to the next part of this story, can I ask you something? Have you ever felt that instinct to protect someone you love? That fire in your belly that says, "Not on my watch"? If you are feeling that connection with me and Sarah right now, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. It means the world to us. And leave a comment below saying, "I stand with Sarah." I read every single comment, and it warms my heart to know we are not alone in this fight. Your support gives us strength. Now let me tell you what happened when the sun came up, because the nightmare was far from over. The morning after the arrest brought a cold gray light into the living room where Sarah and I had barely slept. I had taken Sarah back to my house, a place she hadn't stayed in for years. She looked small in her old childhood bed, surrounded by her high school trophies and books, a stark contrast to the bruised and broken woman lying there now. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. It was not a friend. It was the local news. Apparently, the arrest of a prominent real estate mogul like Kevin Harrison was headline material. Brenda had wasted no time. I checked online and saw a statement released by the Harrison family lawyer. It claimed that Kevin was the victim of a mentally unstable wife and an overbearing mother-in-law who staged the incident to extort money. They were already spinning the narrative. They were painting Sarah as the villain. I knew this tactic well. It is called DARVO, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. It is the classic playbook of abusers and narcissists. I went downstairs and made a pot of strong coffee. I needed to be sharp. I called Sarah into the kitchen. "Sarah, listen to me. They are going to come at us hard. Brenda has money and she has connections. They are going to try to ruin your reputation to discredit your testimony. Are you ready to fight this?" Sarah looked down at her coffee cup. Her hands were still trembling, but there was a flicker of something new in her eyes. Anger. Mom, he told everyone I was an alcoholic. He told his friends I fell down the stairs last month. I didn't fall. He pushed me. I am done lying for him. I am ready. We went to the police station to file the official statement and request a restraining order. The atmosphere was tense. Even though Chief Miller was on our side, Kevin lawyers were already there, swarming the place like sharks smelling blood. They were loud, arrogant men in expensive suits. One of them approached us in the waiting area. "Mrs. Vance, Sarah," he said with a fake smile. "Can we have a word? Perhaps we can settle this quietly. If you drop the charges, Kevin is willing to pay for—" I cut him off. "Kevin cannot pay for my daughter's dignity. Step away from us, or I will file a complaint for harassment." The lawyer sneered and walked away. But the real blow came 2 days later. Kevin was out on bail, of course. His mother paid the bond instantly. And then the attacks started. Sarah Employer, an architectural firm that did a lot of business with Kevin Company, called her. They told her she was being placed on indefinite leave because her personal life was becoming a distraction to the firm. It was illegal, it was unfair, but it was happening. Kevin was cutting off her income. Then, mutual friends started blocking Sarah on social media. Brenda had been calling everyone, spreading lies that Sarah was addicted to pills and had attacked Brenda with a knife. It was a smear campaign of the highest order. I sat in my study, surrounded by legal pads and old case files. I felt a wave of exhaustion. I was retired. I was supposed to be gardening, not fighting a war. But then I looked at a photo of Sarah and her father on my desk, and I felt that cold rage return. I needed leverage. I knew that bullies like Kevin and Brenda always had skeletons in their closet. People who treat their family this way usually have a history of it. I decided to do something I hadn't done since my days on the bench. I called a private investigator named Jack. Jack was the best in the state. He was expensive, and he was discreet. "Jack," I said when he answered, "I need a full background check on Brenda Harrison. Not just credit reports. I want to know where she lived 20 years ago. I want to know about her late husband. I want to know everything she has ever tried to hide." Jack chuckled. "The Harrison family? That is a big fish, Tina. They are careful." "I don't care," I replied. "Dig deep. Find me the dirt." While Jack started digging, Sarah and I focused on survival. We changed her phone number. We installed security cameras around my house. Every time a car slowed down outside, our hearts jumped. Kevin was sending flowers to the house with notes that said, "I forgive you. Come home." It was psychological warfare. He was trying to mess with her head, trying to make her doubt her reality. But I kept reminding her of the slap. I kept reminding her of the laugh. "Do not forget who they are, Sarah. Do not let the flowers fool you. They are just another form of manipulation." A week later, Jack called me. His voice was different this time, serious, low. "Tina, you need to come to my office, now." I don't want to say this over the phone. My heart began to pound. I grabbed my car keys and told Sarah to lock the doors and not open them for anyone. I drove to Jack's office in the city, my mind racing. What had he found? Was it tax fraud? Was it an affair? When I walked into Jack's office, he was sitting at his desk with a thick file in front of him. He looked pale. He didn't even say hello. He just slid a black and white photograph across the desk. It was an old newspaper clipping from a small town in Ohio, dated 30 years ago. The headline read, "Local businessman dies in accidental fire." I looked at the picture of the grieving widow standing in front of the burnt house. It was younger, with darker hair, but the eyes were unmistakable. It was Brenda. Jack pointed to the text. Her name wasn't Brenda Harrison back then. It was Brenda Miller. Her husband died in a house fire. She collected a massive life insurance policy. The fire was ruled accidental, caused by a faulty heater. But look at this. Jack slid another paper across. This is a police report from 2 weeks before the fire. The husband had called the police claiming his wife was poisoning his food. The report was dismissed as a domestic dispute. Tina, she didn't just abuse her son. I think she murdered his father to start her empire. And I found something else. There was a witness back then. A child. I stared at the documents, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The air in the room felt suddenly thin, making it hard to breathe. Murder. We were dealing with a murderer. This wasn't just about a toxic mother-in-law anymore. This was about a woman who had killed to get what she wanted and had gotten away with it for 3 decades. And the child? I asked Jack, my voice barely a whisper. Who was the witness? Jack flipped a page in the file. The son. Kevin. He was 8 years old. He told a neighbor he saw Mommy lighting matches in the basement. But when the police questioned him later, he changed his story. He said he was asleep. Brenda took him, moved to a different state, changed their names, and used the insurance money to build the real estate business. It all made sense. The twisted bond between them. Brenda had controlled Kevin his entire life, not just with motherly guilt, but with a dark secret they shared. He was her accomplice, even if he was an unwitting one at age 8. She had groomed him, protected him, and turned him into a monster just like her. And now she was protecting him again, because if he fell, he might talk. If Sarah pushed Kevin too hard, if he cracked under pressure in jail, he might reveal the truth about his father's death. That was why Brenda was fighting so hard. She wasn't fighting for her son's freedom. She was fighting for her own survival. I drove home in a daze. The gravity of the situation was terrifying. If Brenda knew we were digging into this, we were in serious danger. A woman who burns her husband alive would not hesitate to hurt Sarah or me. I arrived home to find Sarah sitting on the porch, hugging her knees. She looked up at me, her eyes red. "Mom," Kevin called. "He used a burner phone," he said. "He said he has photos, private photos. He said he will leak them to the internet if I don't drop the charges by tomorrow." I felt a surge of nausea. This was their next move. Humiliation. Total destruction of her character. I sat down beside her and took her hands. "Sarah, listen to me carefully. He is terrified. He is throwing everything he has because he knows he is losing. But I know something now. Something that can stop them. Something that can put Brenda away for the rest of her life." I told her everything Jack had found. As I spoke, Sarah's face went from fear to shock, and then to a cold realization. "That explains it," she whispered. "He used to have nightmares, Mom, screaming about fire. Brenda would always rush in and hush him, tell him to shut up, give him pills to sleep. I always thought it was stress. We have to be smart," I said. "We cannot just go to the police with an old newspaper clipping and a hunch. We need proof. We need to reopen that case in Ohio, and we need to make Kevin turn on her. We need to break the bond between them." The next morning, the harassment escalated. A brick was thrown through my living room window. Wrapped around it was a note. "Stop digging or you will get burned." They knew. Jack must have triggered an alert when he pulled the old files. Or maybe Brenda still had contacts in that small town. Fear tried to grip me, but I pushed it down. I called Chief Miller again. "Michael, I have evidence of a cold case homicide linked to Brenda Harrison. I am bringing it to you, but I need federal protection for Sarah. This is way bigger than a domestic assault." Chief Miller was silent for a long time. "Tina, if you are right, this is a hornet's nest. Bring what you have. I will call the FBI field office." We spent the afternoon at the station laying out the timeline. The insurance money, the name change, the suspicious fire report, the retracted testimony of the child. The FBI agent, a sharp woman named Agent Carter, looked at the file with interest. "It is circumstantial," she said, "but it is enough to open an investigation. The problem is, without a confession or new physical evidence, it will be hard to convict her for a 30-year-old crime. Unless we get Kevin to flip," I finished her sentence. Agent Carter nodded. "Exactly. If he testifies that he saw her start the fire, she is done. But why would he? He is loyal to her. Because she is about to betray him," I said, an idea forming in my mind. "Brenda is a survivor. If the ship sinks, she will drown Kevin to save herself. We just need to show him that." We came up with a plan. It was risky. It involved psychological warfare of our own. We needed to make Kevin believe that Brenda was cutting a deal to pin the current assault and perhaps other financial crimes entirely on him. We needed a wire, and we needed Sarah to be the one to talk to him. "Sarah, are you strong enough to face him?" I asked her that night. She looked at the boarded-up window in our living room. She looked at the bruise fading on her cheek. She took a deep breath. "He took years of my life, Mom. He made me feel small. He slapped me, and she laughed. I am not small anymore. I will do it. I will talk to him. The plan was set for the following Tuesday. Kevin had a hearing regarding the violation of the restraining order, the burner phone call he made to Sarah. It was a minor charge compared to the assault, but it gave us a chance to get him in a room. Sarah agreed to meet him in the courthouse consultation room, with his lawyer present, under the pretense of discussing a settlement for the divorce. Brenda would be in the waiting area, unaware of what was happening inside. We had to plant the seed of doubt in Kevin's mind. I walked Sarah to the courthouse doors. Her hands were cold, but her stride was steady. "Remember," I whispered, "you are the architect now. You are designing his downfall." She nodded and walked through the metal detectors. I went to the observation deck with Agent Carter. We couldn't hear them, but we could see them through the glass of the room, and Sarah was wearing a recording device. Inside the room, as Sarah later recounted and the recording confirmed, Kevin was smug. He leaned back in his chair. "I knew you would come crawling back, Sarah. Mom said you would break. You miss the money, don't you?" Sarah kept her voice calm. "Actually, Kevin, I came to tell you that your mother is meeting with the district attorney this afternoon." Kevin frowned. "What are you talking about?" Sarah leaned in. "She is offering them your financial records, Kevin. The offshore accounts, the tax evasion you did for the business. She is telling them it was all your idea, that she was just a helpless old widow who didn't know what her son was doing. She is trading you for immunity." Kevin laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. "You are lying. She would never do that." Sarah shrugged. "Would she? She watched you get arrested and didn't stop it. She is out there right now, talking to her own lawyer, separating her assets from yours. Why do you think she hasn't paid your legal fees for this specific hearing? Check your lawyer account." Kevin looked at his lawyer, who shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, Mr. Harrison, there has been a delay in the transfer from your mother trust." Kevin's face went pale. The seed was planted. Sarah stood up. "She is going to let you rot in prison, Kevin, just like she let your father burn. It was a gamble. A massive, dangerous sentence." Kevin's eyes bulged. He stood up, slamming his hands on the table. "Shut up. You don't know anything." Sarah walked out, leaving him breathing heavily, looking like a trapped animal. When Sarah came out, she collapsed into my arms. "I did it," she sobbed. "I said it. Now we had to wait." The tension in the next 24 hours was unbearable. We were waiting for Kevin Paranoia to do the work. We knew Brenda wasn't actually cutting a deal yet, but we knew her character. She was selfish. If Kevin confronted her, she would react defensively, and that would confirm his fears. That night, my phone rang. It was Agent Carter. "You are not going to believe this. Kevin Harrison just requested a meeting with the DA. He says he wants to talk about Ohio." My heart skipped a beat. It worked. The bond was broken. The monster was eating its own tail. But just as we felt a moment of relief, the lights in my house flickered and died. The entire house plunged into darkness. I looked out the window. The streetlights were on. It was just my house. Then I smelled it. The distinct chemical smell of gasoline. Panic, cold and sharp, seized my chest. They weren't waiting for the legal battle. Brenda knew. Somehow, she knew Kevin was cracking. And she was coming to finish the job she started 30 years ago. "Sarah," I screamed, "get to the back door." I grabbed my phone to call 911, but there was no signal. A jammer. She had brought a signal jammer. This was professional. This was an execution. We ran to the back door, but it was jammed from the outside. Wedged shut. Smoke began to curl under the front door. I coughed, covering my mouth. We were trapped. Oh, my friends, my hands are shaking just remembering that smell. The smell of fear and smoke. It is in these moments when you think it is the end that you realize what truly matters. It is not money, it is not pride, it is love, it is life. Before I tell you how we face the fire, I want to ask you something from the bottom of my heart. If you are listening to this, and you have ever overcome a dark moment, or if you are praying for Sarah and me right now, please subscribe and leave a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me about a time you had to be brave. This channel is not just for me to talk. It is for us to heal together. And if you have a topic you want me to cover next, let me know. Your voice matters here. Now, Let me tell you how we survived the flames. The smoke was getting thicker, a black, choking cloud that filled the hallway. My eyes stung, tears streaming down my face, not from emotion, but from the acrid fumes. I could hear the crackling of the fire at the front of the house, a hungry, roaring beast devouring the wood of the porch. Sarah was coughing violently beside me, clutching my arm. "Mom, we are trapped. What do we do?" Panic threatened to paralyze me, but I forced it down. I looked around the kitchen. The back door was wedged. The windows? They were double-paned, reinforced glass. I had installed them for security, and now they were our prison walls. "Grab a chair," I yelled over the roar of the fire. We grabbed one of the heavy oak dining chairs together. 1, 2, 3. We smashed it against the kitchen window. The glass cracked, but didn't shatter. Again, we swung with everything we had. The glass shattered outward just as the fire alarm finally began to blare, a piercing shriek in the darkness. We scrambled out the window, cutting our hands on the shards, tumbling onto the cool grass of the backyard. We didn't stop. We ran toward the fence, away from the heat that was radiating from my home. As we reached the edge of the property, I looked back. My front porch was engulfed in flames. And there, standing by the tree line, illuminated by the orange glow of the fire, was a figure. It was a man, dressed in black, holding a gas can. He turned to run, but suddenly, blinding spotlights flooded the yard. "Police! Freeze! Get on the ground!" It was the SWAT team. Agent Carter had suspected Brenda might try something desperate, and she had stationed a surveillance team nearby. They had seen the man approach. They tackled him to the ground. But it wasn't Brenda. It was a hired thug. Brenda was too smart to do the dirty work herself this time. Or so she thought. As the firefighters arrived, sirens wailing in the night, Sarah and I sat in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in blankets, watching my house burn. I had lost my home, but I had my daughter. And Brenda had just made her final mistake. The hired arsonist didn't last long in interrogation. He gave up Brenda's name within an hour for a plea deal. He had texts, payments, everything. And at the same time, in another interrogation room, Kevin was spilling his guts. He told the FBI everything about the fire in Ohio. He described how his mother had mixed sleeping pills into his father's dinner, how she had poured the accelerant, how she had forced him to lie to the police, telling him that if he told the truth, the bad men would take him away and put him in a cage. The next morning, the police raided Brenda Mansion. I insisted on being there. I stood behind the police tape with Sarah as they brought her out. She wasn't laughing this time. She was in handcuffs, her expensive hair disheveled, her face a mask of pure fury. When she saw us, she stopped. She looked at Sarah, then at me. "You think you won?" she hissed. "You are nothing. I built this family. I built everything." I stepped forward, looking her dead in the eye. "You built nothing, Brenda. You built a graveyard and called it a home. And now, you are going to the only home you deserve. A cell. Officer, take her away." As they shoved her into the police car, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't realized I was carrying. It was over. The empire of lies had crumbled. The trial was the final battle. It lasted 3 weeks. Kevin pleaded guilty to assault and accessory to the arson, testifying against his mother to reduce his sentence. He got 10 years. He looked broken on the stand, a man who realized too late that his mother-love was a poison. Brenda. Brenda fought to the end. She hired the most expensive defense team in the state. She tried to charm the jury. She tried to cry. But when the evidence of the Ohio fire came out, the photos, the new forensic analysis, Kevin's testimony, her mask slipped. The jury saw the cold, calculating killer beneath the grandmotherly facade. The verdict came back in 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, for the Ohio case, attempted murder, for the fire at my house, arson, and obstruction of justice. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the gavel banged, Sarah squeezed my hand so hard I thought she might break it. She didn't cry. She just exhaled, a long, deep breath she had been holding for years. It has been 2 years since that day in the courtroom. Life has a way of growing over the scorched earth, just like green grass returns after a fire. My house was rebuilt, simpler this time, but warmer. It is filled with light and new memories. But the most beautiful reconstruction has been Sarah. It wasn't easy. The scars of emotional and physical abuse don't disappear overnight. For the first few months, she jumped at loud noises. She had nightmares. She struggled to trust her own judgment. But she went to therapy. She reconnected with her old friends who apologized for believing the lies. She started drawing again. Last month, she opened her own small architecture studio. She designs homes that are safe, full of open spaces and light, the opposite of the prison she lived in. We visit the prison sometimes. Not to see Brenda. I never want to see that woman again. We go to speak to women who are incarcerated for defending themselves against abusers. Sarah shares her story. She tells them that they are not alone, that they are not crazy, and that there is a way out. She has become a voice for the voiceless. She turned her pain into power. Kevin writes to her occasionally. He apologizes. He says he is getting therapy in prison, realizing how his mother brainwashed him. Sarah never writes back. She has forgiven him, not for him, but for herself. She realized that holding on to hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She let it go so she could fly. As for me, I am back to gardening. I grow roses now. They have thorns, yes, but they are beautiful. They remind me that you have to protect what is beautiful. I look at my daughter, laughing in the kitchen as she bakes cookies, without fear of spilling flour, without fear of judgment. And I know that every sleepless night, every threat, every moment of terror was worth it. I learned that evil is real. It can sit across from you at a dinner table and laugh while you bleed. But I also learned that good is stronger. The love of a mother, the truth, and the courage to make that one phone call, that is stronger than any darkness. To everyone listening to this story, don't ignore the red flags. Don't let anyone silence you. If you see something, say something. If you are hurting, reach out. You are worth fighting for. You are worth saving. Thank you for letting me share this journey with you. It was hard to relive, but I hope it gives you strength. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep building this community of survivors and warriors. And remember, no matter how dark the night gets, the sun always rises. I am Tina, and I am sending you all my love. Until the next story, goodbye.